and I am 28. I will smack a big bitch. What that bitch wanna do? I'll send you right to the Lord.
At exactly midnight on June 25, 2023, a young mother raised a shot glass to her phone screen, toasting her 28th birthday with a radiant smile. "Happy birthday to me," she laughed, her voice filled with joy and anticipation for the year ahead. But what happens when a single hug, something as innocent as friends greeting each other, triggers a deadly chain of events that leaves 3 people dead, 6 wounded, and over 50 shots fired in the streets of Kansas City? This is the story of Jassity Strong, a woman who had overcome tremendous odds to build a beautiful life for her 2 children. A certified nursing assistant with dreams of becoming a registered nurse. A talented makeup artist whose work was gaining recognition across the city. A devoted mother who planned every detail of her future with meticulous care. She should have returned home that morning to celebrate with birthday cake and her children's laughter. Instead, within 5 hours of that midnight toast, she would be lying dead in a Kansas City street, her blood mixing with the asphalt where shell casings scattered like deadly confetti. 3 families destroyed. All because one man chose violence over walking away. All because a system designed to protect the public failed catastrophically, releasing a dangerous repeat offender on a pathetic $1,000 bond just 48 hours before he would commit mass murder. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe we need to understand these tragedies to prevent them, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything about how we handle violent criminals in America. To understand the magnitude of what was lost that night, you need to know who Jassity Strong really was. This wasn't just another name in the headlines. This was a woman who had turned childhood trauma into unshakable determination. Born in 1995 in Kansas City, Missouri, Jassity entered a world where the deck was already stacked against her. Her mother, Tamika Jenkins, was barely 15 years old when she held her first baby. "We grew up together," Tamika would later reflect, and those words carry more weight than most people realize, 2 children really learning life's hardest lessons side by side. The early years were marked by instability and heartbreak. Jassity's biological father was taken from her through violence before she could form lasting memories of him. That loss, experiencing the brutal reality of street violence before she could even understand it, would shape her entire approach to life. But instead of becoming bitter, Jassity became fiercely protective. As the eldest of 5 siblings, she naturally fell into the role of second mother. Not because anyone asked her to, but because that's who she was at her core. While other teenagers worried about fitting in at school, Jassity was making sure her younger brothers and sisters had what they needed. Everyone who knew her described the same qualities: bubbly, forgiving, happy-go-lucky. But those simple words don't capture the depth of her character. Her family called her Jass, and that nickname became synonymous with reliability in their household. If someone needed help, financial, emotional, or otherwise, they called Jass. She never hesitated. Despite all the family responsibilities she carried, Jassity refused to let her dreams die. She completed her certified nursing assistant training, driven by a motivation that went far beyond just needing a job. Her grandmother's treatment in healthcare facilities had opened her eyes to how the elderly were often overlooked, dismissed, or treated without basic dignity. Working with elderly patients became more than employment for her, it was a mission. She would stay late to comfort residents who didn't get visitors. She learned their favorite songs and would hum them during difficult procedures. But the CNA certification was just the beginning. Her ultimate goal was becoming a registered nurse. What many people didn't know about Jassity was her artistic talent. She had taught herself makeup artistry, developing skills that were gaining serious recognition in Kansas City's beauty community. She had reached semi-finalist status for a Kansas City People's Choice Award. But her approach to makeup reflected her personality perfectly. She was known for doing free sessions for women who couldn't afford professional work. Prom season, job interviews, special occasions. Jassity understood that sometimes a little confidence boost could change everything for someone. By 2023, everything was finally coming together. The nursing career provided stability. The makeup business provided creativity and extra income. Her 2 children, 6-year-old Kirsten and 1-year-old Junior, had a mother who showed them every day that you could overcome anything with determination and love. "It's our turn, Mom. It's finally going to be good," she had recently told Tamika, discussing plans to rent a small house by the end of 2023. She had researched neighborhoods with good schools and safe playgrounds. The vision included a yard where her children could play and space for her makeup business to grow. June 25th was supposed to mark the beginning of this new chapter. But while Jassity was building her dreams, another man was building toward destruction. Now, let me tell you about the man who would destroy so many lives that night. Kevin Green wasn't some random stranger who just happened to be at that party. Born on July 7, 1996, this Kansas City native had been building toward this moment of violence for years, leaving a trail of red flags that the system repeatedly ignored. Like Jassity, Green grew up in Kansas City's challenging neighborhoods. But where she chose determination, he chose destruction. Where she became fiercely protective of her family, he became dangerously volatile toward everyone around him. By his teenage years, the warning signs were already apparent. Teachers reported aggressive outbursts over minor disagreements. He struggled to maintain friendships, often exploding when things didn't go his way. Green dropped out of high school without graduating, rejecting programs designed to help at-risk youth find better paths forward. Employment became another battleground where his volatile nature surfaced. Construction sites, fast food restaurants, warehouse work, he cycled through them all. Supervisors consistently reported the same issues: anger management problems, conflicts with coworkers, and an inability to accept authority. Each firing reinforced his belief that the world was against him. But Green's real problems began when the courts got involved. January 2019 marked his first major collision with law enforcement. Police arrested him for unlawful weapon possession, already carrying firearms illegally at age 22. But that wasn't all. The same arrest netted multiple drug charges, revealing someone already deep in Kansas City's street economy. The pattern that emerged was chilling. Green wasn't just breaking laws, he was escalating. Each arrest brought more serious charges. Each court appearance revealed someone growing bolder, more dangerous. May 2022 brought controlled substance violations. More drugs, more weapons, more violence. Here's what makes this even more disturbing: Green repeatedly failed to appear for court dates. He treated the legal system like a joke, ignoring summons and warrants as if consequences didn't apply to him. Court records paint a psychological profile that's genuinely frightening: documented history of escalating conflicts over trivial matters, exactly what would happen the night he encountered Jassity. Poor impulse control wasn't just noted in his file, it was the central theme of every interaction with authority figures. Substance abuse compounded these issues. Green's drug use wasn't recreational, it was chronic, feeding both his dealing operation and his increasingly unstable mental state. Yet somehow, he kept getting released back onto Kansas City streets. Then came June 13, 2023, just 12 days before he would destroy multiple families. Green agreed to drive getaway for a shoplifting operation in Independence, Missouri. When police moved in, he did what he always did: he resisted arrest. Officers searching his vehicle found exactly what you'd expect: another illegal firearm. Here's where the system's failure becomes most obvious. Despite his extensive criminal history, despite the pattern of escalating violence, despite multiple previous weapons charges, authorities set his bond at just $1,000. $1,000. No GPS monitoring. No restrictions on his movements. No consideration of public safety. Green posted that pathetic bond on June 23, 2023. 48 hours later, 3 people would be dead because someone decided a repeat violent offender was worth only $1,000 risk. The night of June 25, Green arrived at Perfect Touch Auto Detail with his girlfriend, the same woman whose innocent hug would trigger his murderous rage. Witnesses later described his behavior throughout the evening as agitated, confrontational. He'd been drinking heavily, adding alcohol to his already volatile mix of personality disorders and criminal tendencies. Multiple opportunities existed to intervene before Green reached that fatal moment. The system had numerous chances to protect public safety. Instead, bureaucratic indifference and inadequate bond policies allowed a walking time bomb to remain free, counting down to an explosion that would shatter innocent lives. By the time the clock struck 4 a.m. on June 25, Perfect Touch Auto Detail had transformed into something entirely different from its daytime identity. Located on 57th Street and Prospect Avenue, this automotive repair shop shed its legitimate business facade once darkness fell, becoming an underground nightclub that operated without permits, licenses, or any form of official oversight. The building wasn't designed for entertainment. No emergency exits. No security personnel. No metal detectors or crowd control measures. Just a converted garage space where music pumped from makeshift speakers and alcohol flowed freely. These types of venues had become increasingly common in Kansas City, businesses that doubled as unofficial party spots, drawing crowds who wanted to celebrate beyond traditional bar closing times. On this particular night, the atmosphere inside was electric. Music filled the converted garage space as people danced and socialized. Drinks passed between friends. Laughter echoed off the concrete walls. Multiple people were marking special occasions. Birthdays seemed to be the theme of the evening. Jassity moved through the crowd, radiant and happy, embracing the joy of turning 28. She mingled with friends, posed for photos, and lived fully in the moment of her special day. Nearby, 22-year-old Nico Manning was also celebrating his birthday, surrounded by family members who had come out to mark his milestone. The mood was festive. There was no indication that danger was building. But at exactly 4:30 a.m., everything changed with stunning speed. Surveillance cameras captured the sequence of events that would transform celebration into catastrophe. Near the entrance, a man wearing a white shirt, later identified as Kevin Green, approached a small group. His girlfriend had just exchanged a friendly hug with another woman, a simple gesture of greeting that happens thousands of times every day without incident. The woman's boyfriend, perhaps making a joke or perhaps feeling protective, made a comment to Green, "Watch your hands." It was the kind of remark that typically would generate a laugh, an eye roll, or at most a brief exchange of words before everyone moved on with their evening. Green's reaction was different. He stepped back, his expression changing. The alcohol in his system mixed dangerously with the rage that had been building inside him for years. Instead of laughing it off or responding with words, he walked away from the group. This should have been the end of it, a moment of tension diffused by distance and time to cool down. But Green didn't use that time to calm down. He sought out another man and engaged in a brief conversation. What was said between them remains unknown, but the result became clear when Green returned to where the initial exchange had occurred. This time, he wasn't empty-handed. The first shot rang out at 4:33 a.m. Green fired directly at the boyfriend who had made the comment, striking him in the back. The victim fell but survived the initial attack. For a split second, there might have been hope that this would be the extent of the violence. That hope vanished when another person in the crowd drew their own weapon in response. The situation escalated from an isolated shooting to a full-scale firefight in seconds. What followed defied description. More than 50 shots erupted in rapid succession. Bullets flying in every direction across the crowded space. The music cut out abruptly, replaced by screams and a thunderous crack of gunfire. People threw themselves to the ground, scrambled for cover behind cars, and ran desperately toward any exit they could find. Cars parked outside became riddled with bullet holes as the shooting expanded beyond the building itself. The asphalt outside turned into a war zone, with people caught in crossfire that seemed to come from multiple directions simultaneously. In the parking lot, 29-year-old Camden Brown fell among the vehicles where he had sought shelter, his life ending in a place that should have been safe. Nico Manning, who had been celebrating his 22nd birthday just moments before, collapsed outside the building. His father would later describe hearing what sounded like hundreds of gunshots and watching helplessly as his wife performed CPR on their son until paramedics arrived. And Jassity Strong, the birthday girl who had toasted her 28th year with such joy just hours earlier, was struck as she tried to flee. The young mother who had FaceTimed her own mother at midnight died in the street, her blood mixing with the Kansas City asphalt on the same calendar date she had entered the world. 6 other people sustained injuries but survived, including a woman who was shot in the hip and would later provide crucial identification of Green to investigators. The gunfire finally stopped, leaving behind a scene of devastation. Shell casings covered the ground like deadly confetti, a grotesque parody of the birthday celebration that should have been. Sirens began wailing across Kansas City as emergency responders raced toward the scene. In a bitter twist, Green himself had been wounded during the firefight he initiated, shot in the hand by return fire. While Cassidy, Camden, and Nico lay dying in the street, their killer would seek medical treatment at a local hospital, the same medical attention that came too late for his victims. In less than 5 minutes, a simple hug had escalated into a massacre. 3 families would never be whole again. All because someone chose violence over walking away. The phone call came at 4:47 a.m. Tamika Jenkins had been sleeping peacefully, birthday decorations still hanging from the night before, when her world shattered completely. Her daughter, Cassidy, the girl she'd raised since she was 15 herself, was gone. Shot down in a Kansas City street during what should have been the happiest night of the year. 6-year-old Kirsten woke up that morning expecting birthday cake for breakfast and her mother's warm hugs. Instead, she found her grandmother crying at the kitchen table, unable to explain why mommy wasn't coming home. The little girl kept asking the same question over and over, "Where's my mommy? When is she coming back?" Tamika had to tell her granddaughter that mommy had gone to heaven, watching Kirsten's face crumble as she tried to process words no 6-year-old should ever hear. 1-year-old Junior was too young to understand, but not too young to feel the absence. He kept reaching toward the door when he heard footsteps, expecting his mother's arms to lift him up. When strangers came instead, social workers, family members, people making arrangements, he would cry inconsolably, sensing something was terribly wrong in his small world. The custody situation became complicated immediately. Junior went to live with his father, separating the siblings during the most traumatic time of their young lives. Kirsten stayed with Tamika, who suddenly found herself raising a grieving child while drowning in her own overwhelming sorrow. At 43 years old, she was back to school pickups, bedtime stories, and playground visits, all while planning her daughter's funeral. "I will never have closure," Tamika told reporters through tears. "That was my oldest child, my first love. Losing the child you gave birth to is the worst pain any mother can endure." She'd already raised Cassidy once, from teenage pregnancy through young womanhood. Now she was raising Kirsten, reliving motherhood while mourning the daughter who should have been there to do it herself. The Manning family faced identical heartbreak. Nico had been celebrating his birthday too, turning 22 with friends and family. His father heard the gunshots from blocks away, running toward the sound instead of away from it. By the time he reached his son, it was too late. His wife performed CPR in the street until paramedics arrived, refusing to give up hope. Camden Brown's family planned their 3rd funeral that week, joining a heartbroken community struggling to understand how a simple celebration had become such a nightmare. The financial devastation hit immediately. Cassidy's multiple jobs, her CNA work, her growing makeup business, had provided family stability. Funeral costs, legal fees, and sudden childcare expenses overwhelmed families already struggling with unthinkable grief. But the community's response was immediate and powerful. Within hours of the shooting, something remarkable began happening at 57th and Prospect Avenue, where shell casings had scattered across asphalt just days before. Kansas City residents started arriving with candles, flowers, and handwritten notes. The corner where 3 lives ended was becoming something sacred, a place where the community could process their collective shock and grief. Tamika watched from her car as strangers tied birthday balloons to the chain-link fence. Purple and gold streamers fluttered in the Missouri wind, creating a stark contrast against the industrial backdrop. Chalk messages covered the sidewalk, "Forever Jas." "Forever 28, written in careful cursive. "Gone too soon," scrolled in a child's handwriting. "We won't forget," in bold block letters. The funeral filled every seat in the chapel. Hundreds of people came dressed in Cassidy's favorite colors, bright pinks and purples that reflected her vibrant personality. Photos rotated on screens throughout the service, Cassidy in her nursing scrubs, laughing with her children, creating beautiful makeup looks for clients. The casket remained closed, the violence too severe for final goodbyes. Community members shared stories of her generosity, the free makeup sessions, the extra shifts she'd cover for coworkers, the way she'd cook for anyone who seemed hungry. But Tamika wasn't content to just mourn. 3 weeks after burying her daughter, she channeled her rage into action. Working with local advocacy groups, she launched what became known as JASA's Law, a petition pushing for stricter regulations around concealed weapons at public gatherings. The petition gained momentum quickly. Within 2 months, nearly 500 signatures had been collected, with supporters ranging from church groups to business owners who hosted events. Missouri state representatives began discussing legislative proposals that would require additional permits for carrying weapons into entertainment venues. These conversations arrived at a critical time for Kansas City. Jassidy's death marked the 98th homicide of 2023, but the year was far from over. By December, that number would climb past 180, making it one of the deadliest years in the city's recent history. The grief remains fresh, but the activism continues. Every signature collected, every butterfly released, every candle lit represents a promise that Jassidy Strong's name will mean more than just another statistic in Kansas City's violence epidemic. The Kansas City Police Department had dealt with nightclub shootings before, but nothing quite like the carnage at Perfect Touch Auto Detail. Within minutes of the first 911 call, detectives were securing the massive crime scene, and what they found would make this case remarkably straightforward to solve. The surveillance cameras had captured everything. Frame by frame, investigators watched Green in his distinctive white shirt approaching the group, the brief exchange of words, his departure, and most critically, his return with the weapon. The footage was so clear they could see his face, his movements, even the exact moment he decided to open fire. But the real breakthrough came from a wounded survivor who had taken a bullet while trying to flee. Despite her pain, she provided investigators with something invaluable. That's Kevin Green. I know him. He's the one who started shooting. While detectives processed the scene, Green made a critical mistake. Rather than laying low, he went to a local hospital seeking treatment for a gunshot wound to his hand, an injury from the very shooting he had initiated. When officers arrived 12 hours later, they found him in the emergency room. His arrest was swift, but his reaction was telling. Instead of remaining silent, Green immediately began constructing a narrative that would crumble under evidence. He claimed he was an innocent bystander caught in crossfire started by someone else. The problem? Investigators had already watched him on video initiating the violence. Within 24 hours, Jackson County prosecutors filed initial charges, first-degree assault and armed criminal action. But these barely scratched the surface. By June 27, prosecutor Jean Peters Baker announced upgraded charges reflecting the true scope: 2 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count of felony murder, and 3 counts of armed criminal action. Each murder charge carried 10 to 30 years to life. The felony murder charge proved particularly significant under Missouri law. Anyone who commits a dangerous felony resulting in death bears responsibility for all fatalities. Even if Green's bullets didn't strike every victim, his decision to open fire initiated the chain of events that claimed 3 lives. The contrast between Green's situations couldn't be more stark. The same man who walked free on a $1,000 bond now sat in detention without any possibility of bail. But here's what makes this case truly infuriating: this tragedy was entirely preventable. That $1,000 bond, the decision that directly led to 3 deaths. Green had been arrested just 12 days before with a weapon in his car, resisting arrest, with multiple previous weapons and drug charges dating back to 2019. Yet the court decided this repeat offender was worth just $1,000 to stay free. No ankle monitor. No check-ins. No restrictions. 48 hours later, he used that freedom to kill 3 people. The warning signs were everywhere. Court records showed escalating behavior. Previous arrests demonstrated his willingness to carry weapons. His criminal history predicted exactly what would happen. Yet every system designed to protect the public failed to connect these dots. Green had a scheduled court hearing for July 2023. A hearing he'd never attend as a free man because by then he'd be charged with triple homicide. The court system literally had him scheduled just weeks after the shooting. They knew he was a problem. They just didn't act in time. As of August 2025, no final verdict has been reached. Court backlogs extend timelines beyond what families hope for. Green's defense team portrays him as someone caught in crossfire rather than the instigator, but surveillance footage contradicts these claims at every turn. This case reveals how our justice system operates on reaction rather than prevention. We wait for tragedies, then scramble to respond. But Cassidy, Camden, and Nico deserved protection before they became victims, not justice after they were already gone. Cassidy's story is not just a tragedy, it's a stark reminder of how failures in our system can destroy lives in the most preventable ways. 3 families lost their loved ones that night, and one man's recklessness, enabled by a broken system, has forever changed their futures. But let's remember who was truly lost. Cassidy Strong was more than a victim, she was a beacon of hope. A woman who turned childhood trauma into unwavering determination to help others. A mother who worked multiple jobs to build something beautiful for her children. A nursing assistant who stayed late to comfort elderly patients who didn't get visitors. A makeup artist who gave free sessions to women who needed confidence boosts they couldn't afford. Nico Manning was celebrating 22 years of life surrounded by family who adored him. Camden Brown was 29 years old with a lifetime of possibilities ahead of him. Their memories live on in ways that transcend tragedy. Every signature collected for Jass's Law. Every safety protocol implemented at entertainment venues. Every conversation about bail reform and community violence prevention. 6-year-old Kirsten will grow up without her mother's guidance. 1-year-old Junior will never know the woman who worked multiple jobs to provide for his future. But Tamika Jenkins didn't just mourn, she organized, channeling her grief into action that could prevent other families from experiencing this nightmare. The question is, what will you do with this story? If you believe in justice, if you think change is needed in our system, subscribe and share this story. Tell us in the comments, should repeat violent offenders with multiple weapons charges be released on $1,000 bonds? How should after-hours venues be regulated? Do you think bail reform could have prevented this tragedy? Your voice matters. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who can make a difference. Lawmakers, community leaders, and families who might find themselves in similar situations. The birthday balloons still tied to that chain-link fence flutter in the Kansas City wind, not just as symbols of grief, but as reminders that these lives mattered. That their stories demand action. That their deaths must mean something more than just another news cycle. Cassidy Strong. Nico Manning. Camden Brown. Say their names. Remember their stories. Fight for the changes that could have saved them. Don't let this story end here. Make it count for something.